Every safety rule was crystal clear. Every friend knew mixing guns and alcohol was dangerous. Everyone at that house that night understood basic firearm safety. But one person argued the rules didn't matter. One person believed she was above consequences. One person picked up a loaded gun at 5 in the morning after hours of drinking and pointed it at someone's neck while they held a camera. What should have been just another night of partying in Las Vegas turned into a murder scene in seconds. A young photographer was dead. 2 Polaroid photos captured his final moments, and the woman holding the gun had a social media history that would make your blood run cold. Messages about shooting people in the face and getting away with it. Photos posing with guns pressed to her own head. A bullseye tattoo over her heart. Dreams about killing someone with a revolver, and most disturbing of all, written fantasies about silencing the screams of the exact man she would shoot weeks later. Her case isn't just about one tragic night. It's about a pattern of obsession, about messages that revealed desires most people keep hidden, about a defense that claimed accident while prosecutors uncovered evidence of something far darker. And it all comes down to what investigators found on her phone. Posts she made, messages she sent, dreams she shared, words that would destroy any claim of innocence. This is the chilling story of Alessandra Blah, the Las Vegas model who turned a photo shoot into a crime scene. And before we get into exactly what those Polaroid photos showed, what her messages revealed, and how her own friend's testimony destroyed her defense, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like. Drop a comment telling me what you think. Can social media posts prove intent to kill? Or is that going too far? Your thoughts matter. Share them below. Now let's go back to that courtroom where Alessandra sat stone-faced, convinced her innocent act would fool everyone. She sits in the Clark County courtroom, stone-faced, thinking her innocent act will fool everyone despite being indicted for murder. Alessandra Blah has convinced herself this is all a misunderstanding, that the jury will see a tragic accident, not a cold-blooded killer. Her lawyers are painting her as a young woman caught in a terrible mistake. Just friends taking photos after a night of drinking. They're claiming the gun went off accidentally. She never meant for it to happen. The defense is building its case. The grand jury is listening. And for a moment, Alessandra thinks she's winning. But then prosecutors stand up. They show the social media posts, the messages about shooting people, the photos with guns pressed to her head. Everything changes. What you're watching is the moment Alessandra Blah realizes her accident claim can't compete with what investigators discovered on her phone. The moment she understands this isn't going away. Not that day, not for years. Mark Gann is dead, shot in the neck while holding a camera, and the proof of what really happened is captured in 2 Polaroid photographs. Photographs Mark took seconds before he died. Let's talk about Mark Gann, 23 years old, model and photographer living in Las Vegas, dreams of making it big in the industry. Friends describe him as talented, kind, always willing to help others with their shoots. He's got that creative energy that draws people to him. He's building a portfolio, making connections, doing what young artists do in Vegas, trying to break through. He meets Alessandra Blah through the modeling scene. She's 20 years old. Beautiful, ambitious. They start seeing each other. Been together about 6 months. Some people call them a couple. Others aren't so sure what they are exactly. But everyone agrees they spend a lot of time together. He photographs her, she models for him. Seems like a typical creative relationship in the Vegas scene. But there's something darker beneath the surface. Something that won't become clear until after Mark is gone. Something Alessandra has been hiding from everyone. Maybe even from herself. The night of August 23rd starts like so many others in Vegas. Mark, Alessandra, and 2 friends gather at a house in central Las Vegas. They start drinking after midnight. The friends are Maverick Crafts and her boyfriend, Gavin Fitzpatrick. Now, Fitzpatrick works at a gun store. He knows guns inside and out, and he knows one absolute rule: alcohol and firearms don't mix, ever. So when Mark brings his handgun that night, Fitzpatrick does something smart, something that should have prevented what happened later. He unloads the gun completely, removes the magazine, clears the chamber, locks the slide back, makes it as safe as possible. Keep this detail in mind. It becomes absolutely crucial later. The four friends drink and talk. Hours pass. At some point, Fitzpatrick gets tired. He goes inside to crash on the couch. The other three stay outside. That's when things start going wrong. Maverick Crafts will later tell the grand jury about a conversation that happened just before the shooting. She and Alessandra are talking about Mark, about their relationship. What Maverick says next shocks Alessandra to her core. According to grand jury transcripts, Maverick tells her that Mark talks about her all the time, about their relationship, about how much he loves her, about how good they are together. And Alessandra, she's disgusted by that. Those are Maverick's exact words to the grand jury. Disgusted that Mark would call her his girlfriend. Disgusted that he loves her. Think about that. The man who photographs you, who spends time with you, who clearly cares about you, tells people he loves you, and your response is disgust. But here's what destroys the defense later. Earlier that same night, Alessandra does something else, something that shows her true feelings about Mark. While Mark is sleeping, defenseless, Alessandra grabs an empty vodka bottle. She walks over to where he's lying there, and she hits him, hard, right in the ribs. Mark wakes up immediately, startled, upset. He asks why she did that. What's wrong with her? Alessandra laughs. She shows no remorse, none at all. Maverick has to physically separate them. She'll later testify that this moment is crucial. She tells the grand jury, "I feel like her hitting him with the bottle is very important information about where her mindset might have been that night." Yeah, her mindset. We're going to come back to that. Then comes the photo shoot, around 4:30 in the morning. Alessandra and Maverick decide they want to take pictures, edgy pictures for Instagram, the kind that get attention. They ask Mark to photograph them. He agrees. He always does. That's who Mark is. He helps people with their creative visions even at 4:30 in the morning after hours of drinking. Somehow the gun is back in Mark's possession, loaded, ready to fire. Remember, Fitzpatrick unloaded it for safety, but Mark must have reassembled it at some point. Put the magazine back in, chambered around. Why? Maybe for the photo shoot. Maybe because he trusted the people he was with. We'll never know. What happens next gets captured on camera, not video. Polaroid photographs, the kind that develop instantly, the kind that create physical evidence you can't delete, can't edit, can't claim didn't happen. The first photo shows Alessandra lying back against Maverick. Maverick's holding a knife. Alessandra's holding Mark's black handgun. The barrel is pointed at her own mouth. Her finger is on the trigger. It's meant to be edgy, provocative, Instagram-worthy. The second photo shows a similar pose, but this time the gun is angled downward. Mark is standing in front of them with the Polaroid camera, taking pictures, creating art. Or so he thinks. Maverick will later tell the grand jury exactly what she sees. "I see the flash go off from Mark in front of me. I'm watching Mark the whole time. I see the photos start printing out, and then Allie moves next to me. And then there's another flash that goes off. And it's really loud this time, and Mark and the camera fall." That loud flash. That wasn't the camera. That was a gunshot. And Mark is on the ground, blood pooling around his neck, the camera fallen beside him. And those two Polaroid photos he just took, they're now evidence of his final moments alive. What the defense doesn't know yet is that investigators are already building a case that goes far beyond that single moment. A case built on words Alessandra typed, photos she posted, dreams she shared. A digital trail that will make the accident claim look absurd. Fitzpatrick wakes up to screaming. He runs outside and finds Mark on the ground, blood everywhere. The two women are hysterical. He immediately calls for help. Police arrive within minutes. Officers find Mark lying on the sidewalk. They try to help him, do what they can, but the wound is too severe. He's been shot in the neck. The bullet did catastrophic damage. There's nothing anyone can do. Mark Gann is pronounced dead at the scene, 23 years old. Dead on a sidewalk at 5 in the morning with a camera nearby and 2 Polaroid photos that captured his final seconds. Detectives interview everyone. Alessandra, Maverick, Fitzpatrick. All 3 admit they've been drinking since midnight. The shooting happened around 5 a.m., 5 hours of drinking. And somehow, a loaded gun ended up in Alessandra's hands pointed at Mark's neck. Alessandra tells detectives it was an accident. She thought the gun was empty. She never took a firearms safety course. She didn't mean to kill Mark. She's adamant about that, keeps repeating it. An accident. Just a terrible accident. But former prosecutor John Day has a different opinion. According to law
enforcement, it's a clear case of extreme negligence and recklessness. Basic gun handling practices are you assume that every gun is loaded. Using a gun as a prop, using a gun as a toy or a plaything often leads to tragedy, as we see.
Law enforcement, it's a clear case of extreme negligence and recklessness. Basic gun handling practice is you assume every gun is loaded. Using a gun as a prop, using a gun as a toy or plaything often leads to tragedy, as we see. And here's something interesting. Maverick tells the grand jury that earlier that night she witnessed Mark and Alessandra taking the gun apart, then putting the pieces back together. So Alessandra knew how the gun worked, knew how to disassemble it, knew how to reassemble it, knew how to make it operational. This matters when she later claims she didn't know it was loaded. But detectives do what detectives always do. They start digging. They obtain warrants for social media accounts. And that's when the prosecution discovers what becomes their strongest evidence. Alessandra's social media reveals a fascination with firearms, an obsession even. That's how detectives describe it in court documents. In several conversations across multiple accounts, she talks about shooting guns, owning guns, building her arsenal. But it's more than that. She specifically talks about shooting people in the face. Investigators find dozens of photographs. Alessandra holding handguns, revolvers, rifles, always in dramatic poses, sometimes pressing the barrel against her own head, sometimes against stuffed animals' heads, sometimes shooting bottles at unknown locations. One photo has a caption that reads simply, "I like guns." Then investigators discover something even more disturbing. Alessandra has a bullseye target tattooed on her chest, right over her heart, a literal target. Think about the symbolism of that for a second. She's marked herself as a target, but the messages are what seal her fate. In one conversation, Alessandra writes exactly what she wishes she could do. According to police reports, she states, "I wish I could shoot people with real guns and get away with it." Let that sink in. This isn't a joke about action movies. This isn't hyperbole. This is a clear statement of desire. I wish I could shoot people and get away with it. There's more. In another message, she discusses a plan. She suggests going to the tunnels, the underground tunnels beneath Las Vegas where homeless people live. Her reasoning is chilling. If it were only one person per night, the police would remain clueless. Detectives also find messages about killing prostitutes, about targeting vulnerable people, about violence that seems less like fantasy and more like actual planning. Then they find the dreams. Alessandra has shared one with multiple people. She writes that she had a dream the previous night. In it, she shot someone in the face with her revolver, but then in the dream, she went to prison. Even her subconscious knows there would be consequences. One more piece of evidence connects everything together. Evidence that shows this wasn't about guns in general. This was about Mark specifically. Remember that conversation Maverick described? The one where Alessandra was disgusted by Mark's love? That wasn't the first time Alessandra showed her true feelings. Prosecutors present evidence from June, 2 months before the shooting. Mark had expressed his love for Alessandra. He told her how he felt. And according to Deputy District Attorney Mark DeGiacomo, she mocked him for it. But there's something else prosecutors discover. something Alessandra wrote that shows she'd thought about killing Mark specifically. De Giacomo tells the grand jury she'd written about wanting to silence his screams, about thinking of killing him in particular, not just anyone, him, Mark, the man who loved her, the man who took her photos, the man who called her his girlfriend. Think about that for a moment. This wasn't a fantasy about strangers in tunnels. This was about the specific person she was with, the person who would die weeks later with her holding the gun. Now, the contrasts are impossible to ignore. Alessandra claims it was an accident. The evidence shows obsession. She says she thought the gun was empty. She has extensive knowledge of firearms. She insists she didn't mean to hurt Mark. She hit him hours earlier while he slept. She's adamant it was unintentional. She wrote about shooting people and getting away with it. Maverick Crafts watched her friend die. But over the following weeks, something changes in her mind. She'd wanted to believe it was an accident. She tells the grand jury it seemed so out of the question that it would be intentional. But then she remembers. She remembers the way Alessandra talked about Mark, the disgust, the contempt. She remembers Alessandra hitting him while he was defenseless. She remembers the lack of remorse. Maverick tells the grand jury that Alessandra's behavior toward Mark led her to believe something disturbing, that Alessandra was using him. For what? Maverick doesn't elaborate, but using him nonetheless. Most damning of all, Maverick testifies about something she noticed throughout the night. Alessandra had been drinking. Yes, they all had been. But by the time the shooting happened, Alessandra wasn't actually drunk. Her behavior was too controlled, too aware. This matters, because the defense is about to argue intoxication as a reason Alessandra couldn't have intended to kill anyone. We're halfway through this case, and if you're still watching, wondering how anyone could claim this was an accident after everything we've covered, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now, share this video with someone, drop a comment below. What do you think? Do social media posts and messages prove intent, or should we only focus on what happened that night? Tell me your thoughts. Now let's talk about something that makes this case even darker. Alessandra's family history. What happens next shocks even seasoned detectives. During the investigation, Alessandra makes a claim about her family. She tells police that her grandfather was a serial killer. His name was Joseph Blah, and investigators confirm part of her story is true. Joseph Blah was a convicted rapist from New Mexico. He'd been accused of sexually assaulting prostitutes. Police investigated him and found he was linked to the West Mesa murders in Albuquerque. He was a suspect in around a dozen missing person cases. All the victims were sex workers. More than 10 women's bodies had been discovered buried on the outskirts of the city. Joseph Blah was never charged with murder, but he remained a person of interest until his death. The pattern is disturbing. Alessandra grew up knowing about her grandfather's crimes, knowing about his victims, knowing about violence against women, and she wrote about killing prostitutes herself. About going to the tunnels where homeless people lived, about getting away with it. Is there a connection? Is violence hereditary? Can someone inherit a predisposition toward killing? Prosecutors don't directly make that argument, but they present the family history to the grand jury alongside Alessandra's own messages. Let them draw their own conclusions. The grand jury hears all of it. Every message, every photo, every piece of testimony. The defense is about to make a critical mistake, one that will undermine their entire strategy. Alessandra's lawyer, Robert O'Brien, argues before the court that his client couldn't have planned this. She was too intoxicated, he claims. Too drunk to form intent, too impaired to act on any fantasy. He also argues something else. It was unlikely Alessandra would target Mark Gann. After all, he was a close friend, if not her boyfriend. But here's what the prosecution proves in response. Maverick Crafts testified that Alessandra wasn't drunk by the time of the shooting. The defense's intoxication argument collapses immediately. And the claim that Mark was her boyfriend, that she cared about him? Alessandra herself had been disgusted at the very suggestion hours before she killed him. Deputy District Attorney Mark DeGiacomo lays it out clearly for the court. Alessandra Blah intended to kill Mark Gann. The evidence shows planning. The social media posts show desire. The messages show intent. She thought about it, wrote about it, dreamed about it. And on August 24, 2025, she did it. Every claim the defense makes, the evidence contradicts. The contrast between what Alessandra says and what Alessandra does couldn't be more evident. At her initial court appearance on September 2nd, Judge Nancy Bernstein reads the charges. Murder. Open murder with a deadly weapon. Alessandra stands and shakes her head silently, as if refusing to accept reality, as if shaking her head will make the charges disappear. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for October 2nd. Then the grand jury convenes. They vote to indict Alessandra Blah on a charge of open murder with a deadly weapon. Open murder means the jury at trial will determine the degree: first degree, second degree, or manslaughter. The evidence will determine which fits. At the October 21st bail hearing, Judge Susan Balcom makes her decision. No bail. Alessandra Blah will remain in custody at the Clark County Detention Center while she awaits trial. At the same hearing, O'Brien tries again. He argues that the circumstances don't support a first-degree murder charge, that this was at most an accident, at worst something far less than premeditated murder. DeGiacomo disagrees. He presents the evidence that she thought about killing Mark specifically. He presents the messages about wanting to shoot people. He presents Maverick's testimony about her controlled behavior that night. The judge agrees with the prosecution. No bail. The charge remains. Alessandra's trial is scheduled to begin in December 2025. Her defense team has filed motions to review the grand jury proceedings, motions to dismiss the case. Those motions remain pending as of now. The two Polaroid photographs that Mark Gann took in the final moments of his life remain the central physical evidence in the case. Two photos. One showing Alessandra with a gun to her mouth, one showing the gun angled down, and seconds after that second photo, Mark is dead on the ground. The prosecution will argue those photos show Alessandra was comfortable with the gun, knew how to handle it, wasn't afraid of it. The defense will argue they show it was all just a photo shoot that went tragically wrong. The jury will have to decide which story they believe. But the jury will also see everything else. The messages about shooting people and getting away with it. The posts about killing prostitutes in tunnels. The dreams about shooting someone in the face. The written fantasies about silencing Mark's screams specifically. The testimony that she hit him with a bottle hours before. The testimony that she was disgusted by his love. The testimony that she wasn't actually drunk when she pulled the trigger. Mark Gann's family will never get him back. 23 years old, his whole life ahead of him. Dreams of making it in the modeling and photography world. Gone in a second because someone pointed a gun at his neck and pulled the trigger. Was it premeditated? Did Alessandra plan to kill Mark that night? Or did she see an opportunity during a photo shoot and take it? Did those messages and posts and dreams reflect actual intent? Or were they just dark fantasies that coincidentally preceded an accidental shooting? The prosecution believes they have enough evidence to prove intent. The defense believes they can create reasonable doubt. A jury will ultimately decide. But one thing is certain. Mark Gann trusted Alessandra. He photographed her. He loved her. He called her his girlfriend, and she was disgusted by that. Hours before he died, she hit him with a bottle while he slept. She laughed about it, showed no remorse. Then, at 5 in the morning after hours of drinking, she held his gun, pointed it at him while he held a camera, and pulled the trigger. Whether that was murder or an accident, whether it was planned or spontaneous, whether those social media posts prove intent or just reveal a dark personality, that's what the trial will determine. But Mark is gone either way, and those two Polaroid photos exist either way. Evidence that can't be deleted, can't be explained away, can't be ignored. This case raises questions that go beyond just this one shooting. Can social media posts be used to prove intent? How much weight should we give to messages someone wrote weeks or months before a crime? If someone writes about wanting to kill and then someone dies by their hand, is that proof? Or is it coincidence? What about dreams? If someone shares a dream about shooting someone and then actually shoots someone, does that show premeditation? Or is it just a disturbing detail that doesn't prove anything? And what about behavior in the hours before? If someone hits a person with a bottle, shows disgust at their love, acts contemptuous toward them, and then that person ends up dead, does that context matter? Or should we only look at the moment the trigger was pulled? These are questions the jury will have to answer. Questions that will determine whether Alessandra Blah spends the rest of her life in prison for first-degree murder, or gets a lesser charge, or possibly even walks free if they believe the accident claim. Mark Gann's family wants justice. They want accountability. They want someone to answer for why Mark isn't here anymore. Alessandra Blah wants her freedom. She wants the jury to believe it was a tragic accident. She wants them to ignore the messages, the posts, the dreams, the testimony. She wants them to see her as a young woman who made a terrible mistake, not a killer who planned it. The trial will be the battleground where these two narratives fight. Evidence versus explanation, messages versus claims of accident, testimony versus defense arguments, and somewhere in that courtroom, 12 jurors will decide what really happened at 5 in the morning on August 24th, 2025. Was it murder? Or was it the dumbest, most reckless accident imaginable? Did Alessandra Blah intentionally kill Mark Gann? Or did she negligently cause his death through extreme recklessness with a firearm? The legal distinction matters. First-degree murder versus manslaughter. Life in prison versus a much shorter sentence. But for Mark's family, the legal distinction doesn't bring him back. He's gone either way. 23 years old, shot in the neck, dead on a sidewalk with a camera nearby, and 2 Polaroid photos that captured his final moments before a woman he loved pulled the trigger. If you made it this far, if you followed this entire case from that courtroom moment to the social media evidence, to the family history, to the upcoming trial, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We cover cases like this, examining the evidence, the arguments, the questions that juries have to answer. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me your prediction. Will Alessandra Blah be convicted of first-degree murder? Will it be a lesser charge? Or will the jury believe the accident defense? Share your thoughts below. Most importantly, share this video. People need to understand how digital evidence works in modern murder cases, how social media posts can become evidence, how messages can prove intent, how dreams shared online can be used in court. This case is a perfect example of how your digital footprint can become your downfall. Thanks for watching. The trial is coming. The evidence is overwhelming. The defense has a difficult job ahead. And somewhere in Las Vegas, Mark Gann's family waits for justice. Stay tuned for updates as this case moves toward trial. And remember, everything you post online can be used against you. Everything you write can become evidence. Everything you share can be read by a jury deciding your fate. Alessandra Blah is about to learn that lesson. Mark Gann paid the ultimate price, and those 2 Polaroid photos will tell the story that neither the prosecution nor the defense can fully control, because they're evidence, physical, undeniable, captured in the seconds before a gun went off and a young photographer died. Justice for Mark Gann is coming, one way or another.